I do a few things professionally. I am a stand-up comedian. I'm an environmentalist. I'm a somatic therapist. I'm a professor. I'm an actor. I'm an environmentalist, a chef, and I'm sure I'm missing something. Police trainer. Did I mention I'm also forgetful? So I'm going to share with you two of my stories, and a theory I've developed about life is what the universe does is it gives you a problem. And so that you really care about the problem, the universe makes it really personal. And so that you stick with the problem to fix it, it makes sure you personally experience the consequences of the problem. So I'll share with you two major incidents, the two most major incidents in my life that have changed my life. And both of these incidents could have killed me. And in many ways, they shaped me. And in many ways, it shaped me into who I am today. The first one was when I was 5 years old. Through when I was 7 years old, I was raped consistently by a neighbor. So the consequence of that was that I grew up thinking, this is all I'm good for. Then I thought that since I've been through this, maybe what I'll do is I'll grow up to be a prostitute, so that because I've been through this, other girls don't have to go through it. So I can take that kind of desire from men and protect other girls. And the third thing that happened was, as children are wont to do, they believe that it's their fault. If a divorce happens in the family, they believe it's their fault. Something happens, they believe it's their fault because the world is child-centric, which is true. So I believed it was my fault. So I started hating myself. I also started dreading life. Every morning I used to wake up thinking, I have partial knowledge, thinking I'm going to get pregnant today, and then my family is going to be shamed, and they're going to be thrown out from society. So I stopped talking to people. And my hatred for myself grew. But at the same time, there was another process that was happening, which is when a child is touched by abuse of any kind, there is a monster within the abuser that gets transferred onto the child, and the monster grows and grows. And if you're unaware of that growing, one day the monster will be larger than you, and you will become the monster. And this is a perpetuation of crime, generation through generation, or anger. It's called epigenetics. So that's one section of what happened and what my immediate response was, what happened within my body. I'm a somatic therapist, so I talk a lot about soma, or the body. The second thing that happened was in 2014, I was put in prison by the Indian government. And what happened from there was, I had been cycling, because that's another thing I'm a triathlete. So I was cycling 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers at a time. And then I was confined into a room with 5 women who'd committed murder. And I was locked into this room 12 hours a day. And from that, there are a series of reactions that happened within me. The first thing I did was I questioned, have I done a wrong thing? Have I broken any law? Have I done anything unethical? Because my ethics are larger than the law, bigger than the law. And the answer to both was no, I haven't. And there are many that made me look at the concept of law and order in a country, like with Martin Luther King or with Gandhi. He was also put into prison. He also broke laws for a specific reason. I didn't break any law, and yet I was put into prison. What is interesting is that 80% of the prison population in India, this is what I found out afterwards, are under trials. These are people who have not been convicted of any crime. And oftentimes, they spend more time in the prison awaiting their trial than they would have been if they were convicted of the crime, right? So when we're talking about injustice and the concept of law and order, we have to think about that. What happened in my body from there was my faith in goodness went away. My faith in humanity went away. when I was a child and I was raped by a man and molested by a woman, I grew up not being able to trust men or women. I couldn't trust anybody. If you're nice to me, I'd be like, that's all very well, but I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I know people are really nice, give you sweets and everything, and then they hurt you. That's what I learned. In this case, I learned that there is no such thing as a democracy. There is no such thing as human rights. They can take it away in half a second. I didn't tell my parents about it because I didn't want them to be hurt. My parents are elderly. My father is in his 90s. I didn't want them to be hurt, so I didn't tell them I was in prison. And when I got out, I realized quite a few things. I mean, among the reactions, even now, I just took a flight, and I've developed severe claustrophobia of confined spaces. So I ran out of the plane and I cried. And I've taken millions of flights across the world, right, as a comedian. And I've gotten really frightened of being locked in. And other things as well. I developed severe PTSDs, post-traumatic stress disorder. I used to lie in my bed and look up at the ceiling 24 hours a day. I could not string a sentence together. I lost 10 kilos in 7 days, which was my most successful weight loss program. But these things happen, and I realized a few things after that. I'll start with the rape. As the monster grew within me, I'll tell you an incident that occurred with my niece. She was this high, and she would kiss her mother, my sister, on the mouth, as she's wont to do. And she came and kissed me on the mouth as well. And the kiss lasted like that for half a second. But she came away from the kiss like this. At that age, this child knew that this energy within me that went like that in that kiss was wrong. She knew at that age. And I was like, whoa, what just happened? That was my first instance of my recognizing the monster. I have seen in my hands the ability to molest a child. And I was like, all right, two things are going to happen. One, I'm going to stay the fuck away from children. Two, or I'm going to kill myself, because this is not acceptable. At least I recognized it. There are many among us who don't recognize and they become the monster. I recognized it. I didn't know what to do. So the stages of healing are: one, you don't think you have a problem. You think the entire world has a problem when they complain about you. Step two in healing, you recognize there's a problem because everyone is saying you have a problem. Step number three, you don't know what to do about it. Step number four, you start looking. Step number five, you find the right key to the right lock. Okay, 5 stages. These 5 stages usually take at least 10 years to get past in your healing. So since I've known this, and as a somatic therapist, I was taking out the trauma from rape survivors, gang rape survivors. Then I started working with, I got this case and I started working with rapists. Because as she said, rapists, and this is my experience as a somatic therapist, rapists have as much, if not more, trauma in their bodies as rape victims do. Because chronologically, they're the first victims. They're the ones who've been beaten, they're the ones who've been raped. I've asked them and they're like, yes, ma'am, I was raped as a child and I'm afraid to go out into the dark. And they don't do it as a vindictive thing. Understand, it's not an intellectual thing, it's a body thing. It becomes normalized, okay? If all of you are friends with people who smoke, and then one day they catch hold of you and take you to prison for smoking, you're like, what did I do? Everyone does it. If you remember India's Daughters, if you remember what that rapist said, he said this. He said, why are you catching me? Everyone does it. It is not that child's fault. His surroundings are the fault. If I raise you as my child and I beat you every day, when you have children of your own, guess what you're going to do? Only because it's familiar. Only because it's the only thing you know how to do. If I raise you saying you have to cut a banana with a spoon, how will it come into your mind that you have to cut a banana with a knife or a fork or something else, or just eat it by itself, right? So I started working with rapists and taking the trauma out of them. You can either put criminals into prison and have them come out even more hardened and not believing in the world even more. These are people who've been beaten, and then you take them to beat them further to cure them. Okay? If you don't deal with them with compassion, you will not get prevention. You will just get aggravation. I worked with the police. I'm a police trainer. I went with the National Commission for Women to train them on rapes and acid attacks. And what I saw in the police, I cried and I came back. These police work 16 to 20-hour days. They don't get holidays. They are beaten by everybody. And I'm like, where's the human? Your maid won't work 16, 20 hours a day. Your dog won't work for 16, 20 hours a day. These are laws that were left by the British that we're still running on. What about them? Of course they're going to be brutal. Of course they're not going to care about your story. The police is not empathetic. I'm like, if I was that police person who's working 16 hours a day and you come to me, mera rape hua hai, I'll be like, madam, meri baat suno. Aapka ek baar hua hai, mera roz hota hai. Aap meri baat suno. So, my thing is, when you have these problems that are intensely personal to you, that really hurt you and broke me down, I could not stand. I couldn't think. I couldn't do anything. Yeah? All of us have some sort of problem. Look beyond what you're seeing as to what is the cause of it and how can we solve it as a society, because you're not different from me and I'm not different from you. The prison thing was interesting because luckily, 50 years ago, my father was in prison. And he was in the Second World War, and he was stationed in Burma, and these people, the British were cutting a rope bridge behind him, so he turned around and ordered his battalion, making them a suicide mission, to turn around and shoot at the British, his own side. So he was going to be court-martialed and hung until dead. So from him, I have learned, I don't care who you are. If you have a wrong theory or wrong approach, it's wrong. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the prime minister. I don't care if you're the president. I don't care if you're the government. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But not just there. I will provide a solution that actually works. So these are the two stories I wanted to share with you. I'll just open this up to if you have any questions for me, just for a couple of minutes. I'm willing to take questions.
It's not a question.
Yes.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can.
It's not a question, but I applaud you for sharing your life's experiences. Actually, it was very interesting to hear you
Yes, I am. Because chances I give you almost guaranteed, almost all rapists have been raped or beaten or abused. There's 5 kinds of abuse that we put our children through: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, overindulgence of the male child, or neglect. All 5 are equally damaging. So it's not their fault, it's the parents. Let me take one step back. Let me ask you, how many women around you got married to the person they wanted to marry, at the age they wanted to marry, had children when they wanted them? That is the basis of it. If we as parents don't want children, are not qualified, competent, we've not done our own work, we are just creating trouble. I think, sex and reproduction should be, they're like entwined, they should be removed. Okay? So when you have sex, there is no reproduction. For reproduction, you should do something like take your wife shopping, press her feet. So you demonstrate your competence to be nurturing and loving and have a loving family, right? So if we decouple those, then we'll see how many children we actually have in loving homes. So we've decided, right? We'll just separate those two, right? No consequence here. He's happy. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it is. Yeah, go ahead and shout out your question. I can hear you.
Sorry, I heard from you. The question I have is this. You had mentioned about the monster in you. So, what to figure out about whether to just get away from going to the child or just herself?
Right. So what I did was somatic therapy that got the trauma out of my body, got the monster out. Yeah, that's how I became a somatic therapist, because I was trying to heal myself.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are you just randomly standing, or do you have a question? Or you just, okay. Yeah. That's a very good question. If you attack me and you want me dead, right, the best thing I can do is take the beating and then say, how could you do this to me, and lie down and die, right? The worst thing I can do for you is stand up and say, okay, this is my life. I own my life. You don't. And I don't own my life. You know who owns my life? My mother does. Everybody who's loved me, nurtured me, worshipped every dream I had nurtured me, prayed for me, stayed up at nights when I was sick. My life belongs to them. And I owe it to them to be the most powerful, the most positive. Because that is how they raised me. And just if you say a good word to me, I owe it to you to do good. You know, I owe you. I'm in service of you.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
First of all, very good. You taught us very good things today. So I would just like to ask that how, being in such a serious situation, how did you do a makeshift to comedy? Or how that stage occurred in your life?
Right. I'm also very analytical, right? And it's a very sacred profession to be a comedian. Because you can come to me, you can be depressed, you could have had a breakup. One guy came to me and said, thank you, my best friend came to your show. You made his last few days in this life happy. He had terminal cancer. And it went from depression to joy, to hope again. I will give you hope again. So I'll give you an example. Like I got the Nari Shakti Award in 2016. And you're probably wondering why I got the award. I got it because I'm awesome. And the president personally gave me the award. He gave it to me personally because the president has good taste. Right? So we can take, and you know what about comedy? We make gold out of shit. We need that, you know, bad things to happen to us, and we weave it into gold, right? So it's a fascinating profession. It is such a privilege to make someone laugh. You know, one woman came to me, she said, I peed my pants. I said, this is the highest compliment I've received. You know, it's just so wonderful. So try and be that force of, you know what, we affect everybody around us. You know, try and be that force of good. Just a smile to a stranger. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I saw her first. Maybe you came first. I'm sorry. I'll come to you.
So really admire story. So you gave me the stage, like you spoke about the stages of your life, correct? There's the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4.
Oh, I didn't
stage 1.
number them. No.
Sorry.
They were not numbered. They're 1A and this 1B. 3C, madam. Are you South Indian?
No.
Okay, fine. Okay, go on. Very methodical. Yes.
Okay. So the I'm not giving a number, but the stage 5, where you got onto the stage 5. So you somebody just asked about the therapy, or you mentioned the therapy, right? So you think the therapy is the only solution to get to the stage 5, to get out of the stage 5?
Stage fright.
Stage 5. Stage 5. Step 5.
Oh, stage 5.
Step
Again, the numbers. Did I give any numbers? I didn't give any numbers.
Okay, the step.
Madam, there is a catalog in your mind that I don't share. I'm not a reference librarian for your mind. This is miscategorized.
Okay.
Okay.
So sorry.
For me, it was somatic therapy because there was trauma stuck in my body. I was afraid. I was physically afraid. Cannot trust. Cannot trust. If my body took over my mind, it's like, if you're afraid of snakes and you see it on television, a snake, and you go into a panic. Intellectually, the snake is not there. It can't hurt you, but your body tells you otherwise. So this was the solution for me. And I was very lucky to stumble upon it.
So that's all.
Yeah, sure. Offline, I can ask them. Stand here. Out here. Be accountable.
All right, one last question after we need to move forward.
Yeah. So they can't. It is the politicians of the country that have to rewrite the laws. Because if it comes from the police department, they're like, हाँ अपना ही बोल रहे हैं ये लोग. So first, the law has to change. I cried. I cried. Okay. Second, I did do a somatic therapy on them and study on them and found they're very, very highly traumatized. I asked the commissioner of police. I said, how many of your policemen suffer from depression, drinking, obesity, hypertension, marital problems? He says, madam, that's 80% of my task force. So. Yeah, thank you. Offline. He's going to kill me. You don't want
Very,
me
very
there.
sorry to interrupt, but yeah, we have a schedule that we need to follow. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much.